I'm Dr. Lisa Burkhardt Worley, along with Jordan Burday, and welcome to Pop Talk. We're the show where you never know what topics might pop up. Do you feel like you're constantly battling a health issue, both physical and maybe mental? Have you ever thought that your diet might be affecting you? To find out more about how you can change the way you eat to be healthier, then you'll want to listen to today's interview. Lane has the introduction of our guest.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. It is such a pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Mel Tavares. She is a friend of mine. We met through Advanced Writers and Speakers Association, and she is just such a delight. You're going to so enjoy getting to meet her today. Dr. Mel is a teacher, speaker, podcast, radio, and TV guest, as well as a coach. She is an award-winning author of 9 books and contributor of short stories to nearly 24 books. Dr. Mel is also the editor of the award-winning AriseDaily.com devotional site, which I have had the honor of contributing to. She is also a Jesus lover, a wife to Joe, a mom to 7 adult children, and grandma to 11 grandchildren. Oh, Dr. Mel, it is so great to have you as a guest on Pop Talk. Now, can you start by telling us what prompted you to get healthier?
Sure. Well, first, I'd like to say thank you, Lisa and Lane, for having me as your guest. So 9 months ago, I had a massive heart attack and subsequent quadruple bypass surgery. And at the same time, while they are doing the surgery, they diagnosed me with diabetes and a thyroid condition. So as you can well imagine, yeah, I thought I was healthy. I was deceiving myself. And so I began trying to turn this health around for the better.
That's a lot to go through all at once. I imagine you were probably shocked to hear all that, even though maybe you weren't feeling all that great. So, what are some of the changes you made, Dr. Mel? Changes that we can learn from?
Well, the biggest change is going back to what I knew to do correctly and got away from. We all get very busy, our schedules are, and we take care of everybody else. I did the same as many of us. I spent decades taking care of everybody else, and I kept pushing myself to the back burner, and I neglected my own health, my mental health, my physical health. I began eating the processed foods and things, so I started cutting that back out. I was like, that's the first thing that had to go. The processed food had to go because I knew that that was probably the majority of the cause. And then I'm intentionally adding certain foods and supplements back into my diet. And of course, I'm having to move my body, and I'm being very intentional about it now.
That's the hardest thing, is moving our body. Because in one of my books about how to become more organized, that's one thing I said, don't exercise, just move your body. And I catch myself, I'm supposed to stretch every morning. And like today, I went, oh, I'll do it later because I was in a hurry, but will I do it later? So you're convicting me that we have to do it when we think of it and routinely. So in your book, Healthy Living in the Toxic World, you say that relationships can also make you sick, and I'm going to agree with you on that. I'd love for you to explain what an unhealthy relationship looks like, and then when do we get to the point where we need to remove ourselves from it? I think that's called boundaries, perhaps.
Right, exactly. Well, the unhealthy relationships, so that can be friends, that can be a spouse, it can be a family member, it can be someone we know from another sphere, work, coworker. Those unhealthy ones are the ones that are perhaps manipulative. They might be. There's constant criticism, or there's control, or there's emotional unpredictability. And all of that just leaves us drained instead of feeling supported. So that is very toxic. And then what happens over time is our body begins to react to that, and it becomes a situation of chronic stress. Chronic stress then is what leads to a lot of the disease, both physical and mental. That raises our cortisol levels. It disrupts our sleep. It weakens our immune system, believe it or not. And so it leads to anxiety and depression. We have a mental health crisis going on in our country, and a lot of it might be tied back to those relationships. So, bottom line is, if it begins to hurt our feelings, it begins to wear us down, then we have to talk about how are we going to set the boundaries. You said the correct word, set the boundaries. And then I think there's wisdom called for. Bible says we need wisdom. And so we can get out of a situation of a toxic friendship, or a friendship that once was great turned toxic. We can get out of those relationships, or even switch jobs so we're not around coworkers much easier than, I'm not saying like, oh, your marriage is a difficult situation, so run out and, get a divorce. That's not what I'm saying. But we have to look at it and say, when it begins to affect our health, we need to take a serious look at what's going on.
Let me ask you a follow-up question on that. How important are healthy conversations about the relationships? I've got a family member that I know I just need to talk to them and say, where do we go wrong? Is that therapeutic to maybe be able to sit down and discuss some of the problems?
It can be. Can I say that? It can be therapeutic if it is mutual, if the person is really willing to chat and talk things through in a manner that is not confrontational. But if it is a person who is, we know we need to have this conversation, but they're not willing to or ready to, or they're going to be accusatory. My Bible says, don't cast your pearls before swine. And so sometimes we can't. Sometimes, or maybe we can't right now. So we have to pray much. And if they're receptive and you feel in your spirit that it's okay to do that, we can. But sometimes it doesn't work.
Right. And sometimes you just have to take a step back and get on our knees. We have to do that and pray. I can't tell you how much I pray for all my family members, but there's some I pray for more than another, and pray for just a better relationship with them. And so, can we just go back to what's in our food? You say we need to look for GMOs in our food. Can you define what GMOs are, explain how we identify them, and assess how bad they are?
Yeah. So I have a background in agriculture, and I'm interested in the whole, what have they done to the seeds? And what they have done is they have genetically modified, scientists in the labs have genetically modified the seed so that it is more resistant to disease, it's more resistant to herbicides and pesticides, and therefore it will produce more food in a shorter amount of time. So that's basically, they've genetically modified the seed, not the plant after it's grown, but the seed itself, which then, changes the DNA of the seed. And so then what happens is that, and some of the foods are not genetically modified, but they're not good for us because they've got the herbicides and the pesticides. So you can have a food that is non-GMO that still isn't great to eat. But if we want to avoid those, we just shop organic, or and that I hear all the time, like, oh, I can't afford organic food. That may be accurate, but for the most part, if we avoid things without labels, that is a biggie. Also, read the labels. You'll start seeing little bioengineering information. I'd rather, there's so many foods that are GMO products in the foods. To me, it's easier to identify what doesn't have. So if it's organic, you're good. If it has a label that says non-GMO, it's good. Usually I'd still read the label. And then if you don't know, there's a little butterfly that is on the label of many products. That butterfly is an indicator, even if it's a symbol and they don't explain it, that butterfly is an indicator that it has been verified as a non-GMO food. So yeah, they modify the seed itself.
I'm so glad you got into the specifics for that because my older daughter, my granddaughter is a little on the autistic spectrum. And so when she was about 2 or 3, my daughter started really getting into foods and GMOs, and she's not on, they don't eat any bread unless it's gluten free. So no gluten, no sugar, no dairy. And I respect her so much, but she's right. And it makes me angry, Mel, that no one is really doing anything. I mean, a few people on Facebook will say, we're not supposed to eat all this cereal at breakfast because we weren't supposed to eat it. It's all crumb. It's not food. And it frustrates me so much. So I'm really glad that you mentioned it's in the seeds because that's causing so much disruption in people's food. And then let's talk a little bit about what causes heart disease. If you want to have a healthy heart, what type of food should we avoid?
Well, everything we just mentioned, for one thing, all of the processed foods, pretty much, unless they are, you know, as organic as possible and non-GMO. You mentioned gluten, for example. So gluten is an inflammatory food. And because of the GMO modification, do you know that wheat, so let's say we make a sandwich out of regular bread. Do you know that is the same as eating an entire loaf of bread from when we were growing up? It's literally the same. So it's not necessarily that people have a gluten intolerance. All of us would be intolerant of eating an entire loaf of bread. So there's that. And I could go on down that rabbit trail, but I won't. But for heart disease, you're trying to avoid anything that's going to cause inflammation. So most processed foods are going to have the gluten and the chemicals and the GMOs and all the things. The sugar. Sugar is an inflammatory. Seed oils. We're beginning to hear quite a bit about seed oils and the detriment of seed oils. So all of those types of things cause a chronic inflammation. So it is better to I lived in rural area and then I moved to the urban area, and that is when my health issues started. Not just It's a different way of living here in the city, and a lot of people live urban. So, and I got busier, and so I was not growing all my food myself. I was not processing and canning all of my food myself. I started eating the processed foods. That did not go well for me. It did not. Mm-mm. So it's easy to get sucked back into the rat race and did not take care of ourselves.
I've got a quick curious question before I ask you the question I've got written down. Do we have more inflammation as we get older, do you think?
I think it's more difficult to combat the inflammation because our bodies naturally slow down when we age. So the 20-minute walk that we took when we were 20 years old is not going to have the same benefit as when we're 60, for example. So I don't know that. And we've already discussed the food itself is much more inflammatory. We never would have eaten an entire loaf of bread as kids, but that's kind of what we're doing. If we grab a sandwich, make it out of bread that's on the local grocery store shelf.
I'm feeling really bad about the sandwich that I picked up today because
No,
when I go to the church where I work, I have a quick dinner and I have to have my food there. I didn't have time to get it afterwards, so I picked up a sandwich and it's big old thick bread, which I'm feeling guilty about. Okay, heart disease is the number one killer, but cancer is number two. Is it the same stuff that we have to do to lower our chances of getting cancer?
I'll say that plus. In other words, cancer can also stem from the chemical laden food, the GMO food, the inflammatory foods. But beyond that, we have toxins in our drinking water, we have toxins in our beauty products, we have toxins in our environment, all of our cleaning products. So those things also contribute. And then, the stress issue. And I'll say this, only in the last 5 to maybe 10 years have now you begin hearing a little bit about the impact of the 5G networks that are everywhere. And now we have 10G and the EMFs that come with that. And those are now being linked, cell phone usage now being linked to brain cancer. Women that tuck their cell phone in their shirts now developing breast cancer. So we're living in a whole new world now with respect to all of that. So yeah, I think the cancer, even though heart disease is still, I believe, number one killer, right behind it is number two, cancer, and lots of things creeping around that can cause it.
It reminds me of Rome. You remember Rome was the most powerful country for so many years, and they said it died from internally. Their morality went down, but also they were drinking lead, and they didn't know it. The lead things.
Oh,
And so we're doing that the same thing here. Our country is just going to continue to have more ills and more sickness. Uh, and I just keep thinking somebody needs to figure this out. But who knows? Hopefully, I'll just keep praying for that. But in your book, you give a list of healthy spices and herbs that contain amazing health benefits. I'm excited about that, Dr. Mel. Can you share some of those and tell us what they can do for us?
sure. Well, the first one that comes to my mind is cilantro. We talk about the heavy metals and the toxins. When you do a deep dive, and we're not here to talk about all those deep dives, but when you do a deep dive into the benefits of all of these different things, you can look at which cultures use a lot of cilantro and do they have the toxin overload that we have? The answer is no, they don't. So cilantro is very good for detoxing. I use a combination of chia seeds and flax seeds. Chia seed is a superfood. We have certain foods that have been named as superfoods. It binds the toxins also. It moves them through your digestive system and it's also a protein if you don't know that. And it aids in preventing cancer and it's an anti-inflammatory and it boosts your immune system and it gives you energy and relieves, arthritis pain, joint pain. So chia seeds every day, they're my friend. And flaxseed has also a very long list of benefits. You can mix them in your yogurt. You can stir it into your protein drink, whatever you're doing. By the way, there are excellent protein drinks out there, not prefab ones always, but I buy the organic protein drink that's all plant-based and all GMO free. And I just mix in the chias and whatever with that. So we could do that. Cinnamon is another really, really, really good one. Cinnamon helps with your metabolism. It regulates blood sugar, so it's fighting the diabetes. It also fights any bacterial infections or yeast infections you might have in your body. It's another anti-inflammatory. So you'll hear that word over and over, right? It is known to improve memory. Lots of benefits to things like that. And then there's plenty of other ones that I've listed out, like dozens. So the answer, I remember my grandma when I was growing up had a spice cabinet that was full and used every day. The answer is cook with your herbs and spices. Put them in your drinks, cook with them, mix it up, use as many fresh as you can. But when I can't use fresh, I have the organic dried ones. Okay, use that.
Okay, I'm going to start doing it. I like cilantro, and so that's good to know. That's a detox kind of spice, or so I love to put that in maybe some avocado and make a little guacamole, and so I need to do this because I have had the worst winter. I can never remember health wise. I've had off and on an upper respiratory infection. I got well and then I got it again and I had to been traveling a lot, but had to take antibiotics. So I'm finishing up my third round of antibiotics. So you talk about flushing out the toxins. What are some good ways to do that?
Well, the first couple of steps we've already talked about, which is we want to eliminate taking in any more, right? So some stuff is going to automatically start flushing out of our body. So stop putting more in. And that includes your foods and your cleaning products and all of those types of things. And that will flush them out. And then you're going to add the good ones in, like you just mentioned, the cilantro. But the other thing is, in my healthy living book, I talked about a tea, and I've kind of tweaked that. So now I make what I will call a powdered fire cider. That fire cider is powdered organic only. I bought the bulk organic and I mix it in a big jar, keep it on my counter and use it every day. I'm mixing ginger and garlic and turmeric and cayenne pepper and black pepper. Black is because you need the black pepper to activate the ingredients in the turmeric. So you have to put the black and the cayenne pepper in. And then the Ceylon cinnamon, and I have that in the big jar, and then I'll scoop that into my teacup, and I will put the hot water in, and then I add straight up lemon juice, apple cider vinegar, which has the mother in it, the Bragg's. Oh, I know. And how you fix that. And you mentioned allergies a few minutes ago. The last ingredient I put in there is local raw honey. So my honey isn't going to be beneficial to you because I've got a person who has a beehive right around the corner in this neighborhood. So using her local raw honey is going to help. So I add all that together, and that's like I drink it all the time. And I am here to say that I didn't have any respiratory issues, not only this year, but I haven't had anything for 5 years. I've been doing this I've had no colds. I just came back. Oh my gosh, these college kids were coughing on the plane. And I was like, oh no. And guess what I did when I got home? Drank the tea. So it can fight it off, but it can also prevent.
I love that. And let me just mention in a jar on your counter are the dry ingredients. And that's in equal parts to each one of the. I've been taking notes through your whole thing. So maybe I'll have to ask you this later, but I was wondering about some of the equal parts. I'm going to start doing that. That's amazing to do that because we all want to stay well and healthy. So I'm going to switch, Dr. Mel, to another book you wrote called 21 Days to Improved Mental Well-Being. Of course, we may not want to admit it, but we all deal with mental health issues, whether it's anxiety, situational depression, fear, or gosh, even worry. We'd love for you to share a few ways that we can improve our mental well-being.
So they're going to tie directly to what we just talked about with our physical well-being. We need to eat well. We need to sleep well. We need to get outside. We need to make sure that we are not isolating ourselves, that we are connecting with people, and we want to make sure that we're loving much and that we're forgiving much. And those steps will go a long ways. That's not the whole picture, but if we just did that, we'd be a whole lot better off.
Well, those are great concepts and great things that we should do. And I'm wondering if it's similar to what you said in your other book, Return to Eden, exposing some of the lies that are destroying the family. What are a few of the lies that are destroying families, and how do we conquer those lies?
So I talk about that in that book, and then a more recent book, The Make Families Great Again. I kind of did an update on that. Haven't changed. So some of the lies, we as women can do it all and not have our family affected. That is a lie from the pit of hell. It will cause problems in our family if we are overloaded, overworked, not taking care of ourselves. It'll cause problems. The next thing is, I talked in that book about the lie of the public education system, that it's not harmful. Well, yes, it is. So I do a deep dive in the new book that's talking about that's a lie. or that it takes a village to raise a child. No, it does not. And definitely not those that are not in our tribe, that are not in our village, that don't think the same way as we do. There are some lies that the enemy has planted, and it has gone for generations, and it is destroying our families. So time to take it back.
Well, Dr. Mel, these are such great practical books to help people to live healthier, both physically, mentally, helps the families. Saving families is what you're doing with these books. So just thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. I was taking notes as well, just like Lane. I've got to do something. I've got to be proactive because I've never had a winter like the one I've had. So thank you for these teaching us. And like Lane said, we may have to talk to you afterwards, or you tell us which book that we really need to get, so that we can start working on this. So if you want to reach out to Dr. Mel Tavares, you can find her at her website. It's drmeltavares.com. Let me spell it. It's Mel, M-E-L, Tavares, Tavares.com. And you can find all of her books and her contact information also at her website, drmeltavares.com.
Well, we would also love for you to reach out to us here at Pop Talk and Pearls of Promise today. You can email us at info@pearlsofpromiseministries.com. We'd love for you to like us on Facebook and follow us on X at Pop Talk Media or at Pearls of Promise. We are on Instagram at pop_ministries. And you will want to check out all our Pop Talk TV shows, podcasts, and amazing award-winning documentaries on our YouTube channel at Pearls of Promise.
And Lane and I would love for you to purchase our award-winning devotional book called Treasure. It's a 52-week devotional that will give you daily inspiration. So that is Pop Talk for today. We're just ordinary girls
Who God turned into pearls. Have a great week.